It's time for Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
The Bush administration raised red flags starting in April 2001 that the size of mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is, quote, a potential problem because financial trouble in either one of them could, quote, cause strong repercussions in financial markets. In 2003, the White House warning about Fannie and Freddie was upgraded to a systemic risk that could spread beyond just the housing sector. In fall of 2003, the Bush administration was pushing Congress hard to create a new federal agency to regulate and supervise Fannie and Freddie. But then Treasury Secretary Snow was getting a lot of pushback from Democratic Congressman Barney Frank.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not in a crisis.
In fact, Frank said the federal government should be encouraging Fannie and Freddie to do more to get low-income families into homes. And he believed too many people had a sky-is-falling mentality.
I think we see entities that are fundamentally sound financially and withstand some of the disaster scenarios.
Democratic Senator Charles Schumer said, quote, I think Fannie and Freddie over the years have done an incredibly good job. Senator John McCain co-sponsored legislation pushing for regulation.
We're down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%. The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
50 million people had mortgages roughly at that time out of 75 million homeowners. When that bubble burst, it hit probably 40% of the households.
Who do you hold responsible for that?
All of the Democrats voted against it.
They claim to be free market advocates. No regulation, no supervision, no discipline.
Johnny and the Professor.
And it's Johnny and the Professor.
Common sense for senseless times.
Where we talk politics, pop culture, and pie.
Pies are good.
You have a favorite pie?
Cherry pie. The good pecan pie is hard to avoid, too.
Do you have pecan pie during the holidays?
Yes. My wife will make them for us. Matter of fact, we always do our Thanksgiving on the Friday because Thursday, the actual Thanksgiving day, is Pie Day, where Val gets together with generally my daughter and they make, several pies for all the people coming.
Oh.
Generally about one pie per guest.
So how many pies total?
Depends on how many guests.
Well, on average? 4
or 5.
Okay.
Depending on who shows up. And they're always homemade because my wife doesn't believe in mixes.
So what's going on in the wacky world of the world?
Well, what isn't going on in the wacky world of the world? Yeah, and it's funny. I was saying that, but mostly politics. It's weird when you look at the news. I always think it's good to be living in interesting times, but most of it is all around whistleblowers and IG investigations. I mean, nobody's really talking a whole lot about the threat of nuclear this or oh my God, we have this other problem. It seems like it's all politics, which in a weird way says we're living in a fairly peaceful time, unless I guess you happen to be the Kurds and Turkey and Syria right now. That's a little bit tangled up still. There was something in the news today on that. I don't know if did you notice that they apparently have designed a no-fly zone, a border area between northern Syria and southern Turkey. That is a demilitarized zone. That's the term I'm looking for. They have a demilitarized zone in that area. And Trump announced today, the president, that it was going to be a permanent fixture, and that it's putting a border where.
How dare he?
Well, that's what they were trying to negotiate for. So it's really weird. When we talked about this, again, when we last show, I think we were talking to Victor Davis Hanson about the Kurds and this situation there. It's strange that in a small amount of time it seems to have kind of almost resolved itself, that you're making the people in the area solve their problems themselves, with rather than the United States simply trying to control.
How dare he instigate that?
How dare you actually let people solve their own problems, and maybe we just need to keep a hand in to make sure that nobody starts annihilating each other. Because, again, that's what it is. We're going to keep air support in the area, which is, of course, 90% of what you need to keep the peace in an area.
How dare he?
You sound like that little girl on global warming. How dare you? How dare you?
Right.
Well, I guess Trump dares everything, I guess. It's such an interesting time to be living in, such an interesting president. In that way, as a historian's point of view, you just look at him and go, I honestly, every day, I'm never quite sure. I didn't think it was going to work out with the Kurds, and I think it looks like it's going to.
What a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
yeah, you're trying, but it isn't working too well. I mean, again, we've had female guests on this show that actually know Trump, did nothing but say nice things about him. I guess that's one of the what historians call primary sources. I mean, people have actually dealt with him. So, I mean, you can have 1,000 women saying, Trump's a pig, and I'll take the 2 women that actually know him as actually know what they're talking about.
Well, they're on Republicans' payroll or something.
Okay, if you...
I'm reaching.
You're reaching, yeah, you're definitely reaching. They're on the Republicans' payroll.
They're on the Republicans' payroll. They're bribed to say good things. That's it. I knew it.
You knew it. That would have to be. It's all a matter of money, I guess.
Yep, follow the money.
Follow the money. Yeah, apparently Trump being a billionaire is having to bribe a huge amount of people, probably going to be a majority of Americans for his re-election. So we'll have to see about that. That's a lot of money to be spending. I wonder I haven't gotten my bribe, have you?
Not yet.
It's all a bunch of propaganda that was bought for and paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Oh, we don't talk about that. No, change the subject. No, we don't talk about anything she does or the Democrats do.
Or the Democrats do, or Hillary does.
Right.
Well, since the Democrats keeping most of what they're doing in secrecy, it's hard to tell what the Democrats are doing.
Look at my hand over here. No, look at this hand.
Look at this.
No, look at this hand over here.
No, let's not pay any attention. It's like I thought it was interesting that the whistleblower story was, the whistleblower needs to talk and everything, and now they don't want the person to actually give testimony. They just want you to say, well, we have the affidavits, and and believe me, they're true. Well, affidavits are meaningless. If you cannot, if you have a written statement from somebody in a court, if there's no ability for a lawyer to examine the witness, it has almost no credibility in a court case at all. In fact, you can't get a conviction off of things like that. You have to have the ability to have someone cross-examine the situation. And every time that seems to be happening, they have these people come in who are this whole Ukraine nonsense, which is exactly what it is. It's just pure nonsense. It's going to come back and bite the wrong people in the butts, because I don't think you need to worry about Trump in Ukraine. I think you need to worry about what Obama was doing in Ukraine. Could
that be why they're doing this projection and trying to keep the focus off of what they've done?
I think that's a good argument for that. I mean, it's and they're willing to throw Biden under the bus in a heartbeat. And I think that's probably what will end up happening in the long run. That if they ever get into the problems of corruption in the Ukraine and it coming back, the Americans were actually manipulating, which apparently I don't think there's ever been a foreign policy matter done in the Ukraine that didn't have some form of quid pro quo. Which is funny. Everything is quid pro quo. It's, I mean, whenever you negotiate with a country, you say, we'll open up and give you this trade agreement if you will do this. I mean, that if Kim Jong, good old Chairman Kim riding around on his white horse on the holy mountains over there, if he says, I'm going to get rid of my nukes and you're going to give me and you're going to give my country financial assistance, isn't that exactly a deal? Isn't that exactly what you're talking about? Isn't that just foreign policy?
From what I heard, it wasn't even like that. It was just, hey, do me a favor, look into this because we've had problems over here.
And the weird part about it, everyone's saying, well, it was done. They were holding money as hostage against the Ukraine, except that the interview happened about 2 weeks before the decision to hold back money was done. So in other words, he was talking to the president of Ukraine before the decision before they could have even known that money was going to be held back. So it was a meaningless.
So money was held back.
But it wasn't actually. All Trump was what Trump was doing is he was saying he wanted to make sure that it was going to the right places. This is one of the arguments about what's happening in Syria right now. They're also wanting to make sure that the oil fields in Syria are not going to fall into the hands of people like Assad and people or other terrorist organizations. They're actually going to secure them so the monies can actually be used to help Syria directly, to help deal with the problems there, rather than just being fed. If not, the money's just going to go to Russian oligarchs and to Assad and to Biden. Yeah, well, could be. Apparently, whenever there's oil involved, there's a Biden family member somewhere hooked up around in it. But that's I do think that it's very interesting that they're conducting an investigation in the dark with no one able to watch, and yet they're only leaking the information they want. It tells you they really, really, really want to destroy this guy for some reason. I wonder why, if we're going to have an election in a year, why don't they just let the American people vote him out if he's such a horrible person?
I don't know. So he can't do any more damage to the fabric of America.
I think the more likely answer is, and I've even heard Democrats say this, they're afraid if they don't try to find a way to impeach him, he's just going to be reelected, and they're going to have him for 4 more years.
Well, if he's such this horrible person that's done nothing but bad for us and divided us and blah, 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 then why would we vote for him?
Because it's not true. I mean, this is the whole thing. The Democrats, this whole story is based on this scenario we've talked about, where you've got people who are looking at the world and everything. If you want to believe the worst possible thing about somebody, but the idea that you're looking at the absolute worst that people can do, and yet it isn't the case. I mean, medium income, I'll give you an example, in the United States right now, in the last 3 years, has went up about $5,000. That's average income. This is statistical information for from dealing with from the federal government. Okay, during Bush's time, last Bush, of course, it went up about $400 in the course of 8 years. It went up about $1,000 in the course of 8 years with Barack Obama. It's went up $5,000 in 3 years with Donald Trump. So, I mean, why would Americans not want to have the economic situation they're having while unemployment is all-time lows?
That's just all propaganda.
If all you hear in your head is propaganda, then I guess maybe that is what you will perceive it to be. But it isn't the case. I mean, again, unemployment is the lowest for minorities ever. And yet, it's not a big deal. The American economy will do well if you let it go and let it do well, which is what all the Trump has been doing. He hasn't done anything amazing. He just hasn't been holding it back. And I think in the long run, that's what people are terrified of. They're afraid that when I look at Donald Trump, I look at it as a historian. I look at a very unusual situation here. We have been, since the 1960s and even earlier, we've been having a shift in the government, that the government's taking more and more power from the people and regulating more and more of our lives. And we've got to the point now that the inmates are almost running the asylum entirely at this point, and that everyone, that we're trying to, people's freedoms are being held back enough, and all of a sudden they elect Donald Trump. I mean, he's this outsider, and I don't think the war is between the left and the right. I think it's the war between the big government, the elected bureaucrats, the unelected bureaucrats, the power brokers in both the Republican and the Democratic side who want their big money. And you've got somebody who's coming in and saying, yeah, we're not going to do that. Someone who's actually seen their corruption. I mean, every one of those Republicans and Democrats that are yelling at him, almost all of them have come to him for money in the past.
Right.
He knows exactly what they are. And that's the struggle I think we're looking at. He's a weird character in the course of history, because I'm wondering, I mean, if Donald Trump may be the exact... He's almost like a flu shot or something. He's exactly what you may need to save the person from getting sick. He may not be the one himself that is the great representative of moral high ground and all that, but he does apparently still want to take on the deep state, take on this corruption, and give it power back to the people. That's a really good thing. And it may be accidental on his part. It may just be based on his own vanity that he wants to do it. But it doesn't change the fact, if he'll open a window and let somebody actually, let us have some of our freedoms back that have been taken away from us for the last, 50 years in this country, I'm in favor of that.
How dare you say that?
Because it's true.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're running out of him.
I'm trying.
You're
a racist.
If Donald Trump is a racist, he's the absolute most incompetent racist I've ever seen. I mean, if he doesn't like black people, how come we have all-time low black unemployment? If he doesn't like them, how come he's done prison reform that has released thousands of young black men who were incarcerated in the 90s? How come he's putting money into housing and urban development for the poorer cities? How come he's giving traditional black colleges first priority for federal monies coming out? I mean, if he's a racist, he obviously doesn't know how to do it.
Oh, because he's dumb. He's dumb.
Except when he's, of course, a Machiavellian manipulator and the most brilliant, evil person in the world. I mean, Donald Trump apparently goes between being, according to the left, going between an absolute imbecile and incredibly clever and vicious and smart. So, I mean, I don't know how that exactly works. I don't think you can do both those things. But, hey, what do I know?
So what else is going on?
Seattle has put forth a proposal. They're going to look at math with a social justice-infused curriculum idea.
Perfect.
So that, power and oppression, the history of resistance and liberation, because they're finding out that certain groups do poorly in math, and therefore the math itself must be discriminating, is what it is.
And the math must change.
They're trying to infuse this language of the social justice idea. That young people, they're going to have to learn the math according to how it relates to injustices in the world. They're trying to frame it, and they're trying to alter it so that that it's easier to pass.
This makes perfect sense. 1 + 1 = you're a racist.
Well, if you disagree with them, that of course is what the argument is. I mean, the idea of you've got math that's just full of social justice jargon. It isn't just math for its own sense. They're trying to erase the idea of math being a requirement in school. And as a historian, having taught in colleges, I saw that happening too. Because even in the time I was teaching, there used to be a prerequisite in your degrees. Almost every degree you had to take some form of Western civilization. It was part of your critical thinking requirements of coursework. And even the time I was there, they started trying to phase in other courses, like women's studies courses and things to make up for that. And I've actually subbed women's studies courses in some of these other courses, and they're simple. I mean, I actually made people work. You had to actually study about history, understand the patterns of how it moved. It's interesting if you do it right. I hate to be cruel about it, but all these other classes were just a waste of time, because again, they were getting into this social justice nonsense, or the whole politically correct idea. 1 + 1 is 2. If 1 + 1 is approximately 2, you want that person being an engineer building a bridge?
They can only dumb down the curriculum so much.
I mean, I even noticed in the time I was working that the level of students just got dumber as years went on.
They're continuing to dumb down the curriculum.
You only have an elite group that are hopefully going to be the ones studying the higher maths. And it is ludicrous. I mean, if you can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide, then you're not a functional person in American society. It isn't that difficult. They don't have to love it, but they just have to be able to use it. Now, once you get above that, algebra and geometry, of course, calculus, trigonometry. I've never taken calculus and trigonometry because they're not requirements for a history major. I stopped at geometry.
If you can find the school curriculum from, I think it's the early 1900s, 5th grade math then is now collegiate math.
Oh, I'm not surprised. You're wanting to dumb down your people so they're easier to manipulate and control. We've been pushing this country in the direction of a socialist type of state, the particular groups, and particularly on the left, for the last 60 years. Getting rid of history because you don't want to know people how things actually happened in the past. Making people not being as well educated in mathematics or whatever. Keeping certain people down is a way. Ignorant people are easy to control and manipulate. Once a person has their own opinion, it's hard to keep them down. They'll start asking questions, and the first thing that a totalitarian state hates is people asking questions. And when you're talking about the type of socialist government that Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren are putting forth, where the government is taking 80% of your money and then giving you back what they think you deserve, you're in a totalitarian state. You want ignorant people who don't know their past, who don't have any way to defend themselves.
We're going to get so dumb, we're going to, that's a great idea, let's do it.
Coupling all that together with the ideas of a totalitarian state holding people down, and then along comes Donald Trump. I mean, literally, the American people elected an entirely chaotic agent that goes against this whole unelected bureaucracy, the deep state people, the ingrained politicians, the big money politicians, the controller leftists out there that want to make us all into sheep, that they can just herd us along. They're going to be the shepherds, and we're poor people are going to do what we say. Welcome to Stalin's Russia. That was exactly the same way it was then. Everyone was the proletariat being run by the elite members of the Communist Party. It's the way China is today. I don't want to write Donald Trump as some kind of a messiah thing coming in or whatever, but it's weird that we have this, rather loudmouth businessman from Queens who may be somebody who's actually going to help save the freedom and liberty of the United States of America.
According to Pelosi, he was abusing his oath of office.
You have to be a little more specific than that, because Pelosi says he's abusing everything, depending on what it is. I have simple tests for a lot of things in in life. If Nancy Pelosi thinks that Donald Trump should be impeached, then she should conduct a vote on the floor to put forth a measure of an impeachment investigation. We've had 3 times in the past that impeachment orders have been put forth on presidents. It was Johnson, it was Nixon, it was Bill Clinton. That's the first thing you do. The Constitution says that the House has the power to impeach, but it doesn't say it has the power to delegate its power to secret authorities and do whatever we want to do. They need to have a vote. They do have some leeway on what they're going to, how they want to conduct an investigation. The Constitution doesn't specify on that. But every time in the past, it's been with a vote on the floor for impeachment. An impeachment inquiry is generally what they have to do. They vote for that. They haven't done this and this. If they did that, the Republicans would be able to be directly involved in the investigation also. They'd be able to subpoena witnesses, and the White House could send over a counsel to defend and talk to people that are being handled in the investigation, witnesses and the like. They don't want to do that because they're wanting to keep this secret. This is not an impeachment, a matter of law to get rid of a president of the United States. This is an investigation to try to hurt this president enough that he won't get reelected. They're using the impeachment farce, which is all it is, to try to hurt the president enough that he won't get reelected, because they know if they don't do it, he's going to get reelected. And that's their fear. It's 4 more years of attacking the deep state. I mean, there are investigations going on right now with the Inspector General has a report coming out. There's also another investigation. Bill Barr is conducting one dealing with this whole origins of the meddling and this whole FISA court warrant situation and what happened with that. It's going to come back. Brennan and Clapper are under investigation right now. That's former head of the CIA, the former head of the NSA.
And it looks like a lot of this Russian collusion accusation stuff is originating in the Ukraine somehow.
A lot of it did come from the Ukraine originally. It was all started with that Steele dossier. And this Steele guy, who's also someone they're investigating, I mean, he is a former British agent who went off and got information, quote unquote, that he got from the Russians, which was pure propaganda. Because, I mean, I know myself, having read it over, that there are times in there that Trump was other places when they said he was in these places where these things happened. So it isn't accurate at all. It was never been accredited as having any validity. But they used that to get FISA warrants, again, so they can investigate American citizens. In this case, a presidential candidate's election committee. And then eventually a sitting president. This is all going to come back, and I think that's part of the argument. They're using the impeachment on one hand to distract from the fact that we literally have a fight between the Justice Department and the House of Representatives, because the Justice Department may be coming along and saying we have this problem and this and this. I mean, they're giving more ammunition for Trump to fight against impeachment. I mean, it's like they tried to discredit him in the normal ways. They brought out the porn stars, they brought out the Avenattis, they brought out the accusations, and Trump stands there, I swear, he's like Superman with their accusations bouncing off him like bullets. And he just keeps going, and he keeps doing things and getting things accomplished. The economy is getting better, and they turn up the escalation. They make it worse, and he just seems to resist it. I think they're getting pretty terrified at this point, because if Barr is a straight shooter, and he seems to be, and he does an investigation of what happened back in these days, this is all going back to the Obama administration. And I mean, I think people are terrified of it. There were a lot of things that happened in his watch that if Barack Obama knew about, he was pretty corrupt, and if he didn't know about it, he was incompetent.
Well, it's Johnny and the Professor, where you talk politics, pop culture, and pies. Coming up, Rise of Skywalker trailer that dropped during the football game a couple days ago. Joker is killing it. Oh, wait, can I say that, or is that insensitive?
That'd be insensitive these days.
You're listening to Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times. This is Johnny and the Professor. Common sense in senseless times.
There's a rumor floating around that Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is heading back for reshoots. Now, yes, reshoots are a normal part of the filmmaking process, but in terms of the recent batch of Star Wars films, late-in-the-game reshoots usually spell disaster.
They are reiterating this idiotic notion, which is unfortunately put out there by professors and blue-check mark leftists in public school systems, in which you've limited people's individuality, you've limited people's ability to relate to other individuals, individuals to their color, their race, their gender, ethnic background, and so forth, which is bullcrap.
Contact the show at jpshowfm@gmail.com.
It's Johnny and the Professor, where we talk politics, pop culture, and pies.
And pies.
Yeah. I like cherry pie. Cherry pie's good.
Well, pizza pies, too.
Right.
That's not,
right.
I mean, what else do you need in life other than pies? Pizza pies and cherry pies, and you're pretty good.
You being the historian, where did pie originate?
Pies they're beyond the measure of human recorded history, because I mean they'd go back, ancient China, the Yangtze valleys. I mean you've had abilities to make flours and stuff since out of rice there. You've had the ability to go to wheat back to Babylon. I mean we're talking 3000 BC. So I mean cooking, and anytime you cook meat and you make any form of the flours, you can definitely put together a pie. A lot of old pies tended to be more that way though. A lot of people use pies as ways to cook and treat meat, and there are a lot of meat pies in history rather than thinking of it as fruit pies.
Like a turkey pot pie?
Turkey pot pies. I mean, there are a lot of people in all over the world, and different forms of dough. I mean, the pierogies and any sort of thing you put any sort of dough on. It's a nice way to combine. And if you want to grind your wheat into flour because it's easier to store and easier to eat and digest, or whatever grain you happen to need to use. So there you get, when you get flour, then you've got the ability to bake. When you get baked, you're going to have pies. So I mean, it's hard to really say how far it goes back. It's one of those ones that's beyond the scope of human understanding.
So did you watch the Rise of Skywalker trailer?
I did. I don't exactly know what it means, other than they're still abusing poor Carrie Fisher and using CG versions of her. I mean, personally, I know I saw a scene in the preview. She's hugging.
They're using recycled footage of her from the last movie.
And I'm sure they're going to be CGI and working things around it. There's a little bit of zombie factor of that kind of bothers me. The idea that your actress is dead, and then rather than writing her out of the script and giving her, we're going to just use her image, and kind of, walking around like, a ghost that's haunting the movie. It's a little creepy for me personally, but, I understand, I guess, that they want to make sure the story ends. I think that, unfortunately, that old J.J. Abrams, I think he's trying to save something he doesn't have the capabilities to do anymore. I think there was enough damage done with the first two movies, some of which is his fault, that if he's going to try to redeem it in the end, I think he's got his work cut out for him, considering the load of crap from the last movie and the nonsense from the first movie.
Well, the Fandom Menace, their beef is the first sequel movie was just a copy of A New Hope.
I'd agree.
And then Rian Johnson going into business for himself and just kind of not taking the source material into consideration.
I write sporadically and badly with no rhyme or reason whatsoever. I don't think I could ever actually write for a living, write for hire, because
that was the beef with the next one. Now apparently there's rumors going around that they're still filming, doing reshoots. Now reshoots, as we know, are common in movies, but a month before the movie's set to be released, that's not common.
No, that's telling me you still have problems you're trying to fix.
If they're true, and apparently this insider works for Lucasfilms.
It sounds like you're getting pretty guilty in my mind of having serious problems. I mean, I was watching it. Of course, you have the Emperor's voice in it again. I have waited so long for you, and he doesn't, which means, okay, they're going to bring the Emperor back. All right, fine. I mean, nobody, as far as I could tell, I've never seen a truly dead. Any Jedi we've known the name of isn't truly dead, because they always show up. They always show up again as ghosts.
Right.
So I mean, is there any such thing as a dead Jedi? I mean, or a dead Sith in history?
Well, apparently Sith, they can't do the Force ghost thing. Now,
Vader did,
but he turned back to a Jedi when he threw Palpatine over and supposedly killed him and broke free the chains that Palpatine had on him. He reverted back to a Jedi. But in Revenge of the Sith, at the very end, when Yoda says, Obi-Wan, I have more training for you, I'm going to hook you up with your old master, Qui-Gon, he's learned he's learned the secrets to the Force Ghost thing, and I'm going to teach you also. So apparently no other Jedis learned it but Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, and then, of course, Anakin when he was redeemed. And now Luke.
You mean Darth Vader. I'm sorry.
Right.
You can Anakin Skywalker as much as you want. He's always Darth Vader to me because Vader's a cool villain.
Right. But anyway, there's been some kind of, I don't want to say leaks. Nothing's confirmed yet, but, Luke will be there as a Force Ghost, and Leia will be there as a Force Ghost. Not sure.
Don't they have to actually kill her off for her to become a Force Ghost?
Well, according to the rumors, she's going to die like a Yoda-ish type death. She's just going to die, like just right,
yeah.
Right.
Makes it. At least they're neat. I mean, that's kind of cool. That when Jedis die in the right way, you don't have to worry about burying them. They're neat and clean. They're just gone.
And these are all just rumors. Nothing. If these are indeed spoilers and it ruins your life, I'm sorry.
Then you need a new life.
Right.
The question I would ask, from a philosophical point of view, that if only Jedis can do the transcendent Force Ghost, one with the Force idea, and the Sith can't, then there is obviously a component of the Force that is good versus evil, and that it is, that you can't have a true balance between the Force. The idea of we're going to balance the Force, well, how do you balance the Force if only good ones get to come back, get to become one with the Force, and bad ones apparently go to wherever?
Well, it's not that they're bad, but Sith are more introverted and they're selfish and
evil.
Well, Palpatine said good and evil is just a point of view.
Well, yeah, but Palpatine's evil. I mean, the what does it say? The smartest thing the devil ever did was convincing people that he didn't exist. There's an old quote on that. I mean, that's anybody who says that good and evil can get along is evil, because that's the ploy. That's the way you win that argument.
What I always wondered was they're always talking about balance in the Force. Well, after Revenge of the Sith, there are 2 Sith and 2 Jedi, and that's balanced right there. 2 Sith, 2 Jedi. What's not balanced about that? Yoda and Obi-Wan were the last Jedi, and Palpatine and Vader were the last Sith. So the Force is in balance right there.
It was until Obi-Wan. But see, then he went off and got Force Ghosted, and Yoda got Force Ghosted.
Force Ghosted. Yeah.
And it's just, and what did Ben say? He goes, if you strike me down, Darth, I'll become more powerful than you can ever imagine. Of course, apparently not, because he got to be a Force Ghost too. I guess maybe it was if you're a member of the club, you get to invite other people into the club. Maybe that's what it was. So they invited Vader in, even though he wasn't earned his membership.
If you're a member of the club, you get to make up your own rules.
Well, yeah. If the club only has 2 Jedi in it, so far it had Yoda and it had Ben, and so they took a vote and they had a quorum, and I guess they voted Vader into the.
I was making a career politician kind of insinuation there.
That's true too.
If you're a member of the club, you can make up your own rules and
welcome,
do things.
Welcome to the House of Representatives, right?
Right.
Interesting, But I've always, like I said, I've always thought the idea that anger is not a problem to a Jedi. It's just controlling your anger. It's when your emotions overwhelm you, and say you become, like a leftist, and your emotions overwhelm you, then you become a Sith, because the Force is not. You're not controlling the Force. The Force is controlling you at that point.
Anger leads to jealousy. Jealousy turns to hate, and that
hate takes you to the dark side.
Right.
And that's the point on it. The dark side of it. But I don't think it's the dark side of the Force as much as the dark side of nature, human nature itself, or alien nature, as the case, or whatever it happens to be.
Oh wait, no, we can't say aliens anymore.
We're not talking about. We're talking about legal aliens on their worlds, not on.
Oh,
yeah.
My mistake.
If we had Star Wars, I guess the left would say Trump wants to build a wall around the planet, but.
Well, Space Force.
Yeah, Space Force. I'm sorry. That's just, it's. It is controlling orbital weapons and the like, or forces in space, is a way to definitely control the world. But it also sounds a little Bond villainish to me. Yeah.
The Joker, the woke crowd have been trying to bash this movie and try to discredit this movie, and it's just doing better and better and better and better. A lot of people think Joaquin Phoenix should get quite a few awards, prestigious acting awards, for his portrayal of
I thought you were going to say Academy Awards, but I'm not sure that's a prestigious award anymore.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what is anymore either.
I was reading some articles on reviews of it about that it's a manifestation of white privilege, even the Joker having the white face and all that type of thing, from somebody who's an absolute loon. You know, the white face has been used by clowns for as long as we've had clowns. You can look at ancient images of them. They always use the pale makeup as part of, generally because it's so stark. I always thought that it always reminded me of the color of when people die, they get paler. I always wondered if clowns had some connection with the idea of death, which is maybe why kids didn't like them. I've always thought clowns were creepy, personally. They don't. I'm not terrified of them or anything, but I just look at them and go.
Some people are.
Oh, I know. There, it's there's a whole clownophobic, type of thing.
Clownophobia.
I'm trying to remember. There's an actual term for it other than that, but I'm remembering what it is. Let's call it.
But clownophobia sounds good, though.
Well, if you want to be Italian, we could call it Pagliacciphobia.
Okay.
It's Pagliacci's clown in Italian. But yeah, it is. And I think that's one of the whole draws of the Joker. That's why the people find the character interesting, is because he touches that same reason Pennywise the clown from It. People, they tapped into that as the idea for the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix, it's funny, I've actually seen some interviews of him personally. He, like you said, I think we've talked about that, he almost seems to be almost bland when he's not doing a character. When he's just himself talking, it's like he isn't that interesting. But then again, he does these roles where he takes on these personas and then he shifts and becomes
I think he's just really humble.
Maybe that's it too.
And
that would be good. It'd be an actor who's humble. That's amazing. Boy, that's humble actors is like non-corrupt politician. I mean, it's a hard thing to find. It's weird that we have. I was thinking about. I did read a review. I was thinking about going to see the new Maleficent movie, the Maleficent, the Dark Queen or whatever they call it.
I don't know what that is.
It's the new they did the Maleficent movie, the one that had Angelina Jolie in. It was okay. It was a little bit PC, but now so I was wondering. I'm tempted. I read some reviews, and the new one has some problems with that too. Is that Disney's doing another Maleficent character, and they're leaning heavily into the political correctness. In other words, even the Maleficent in these stories is they've moved her almost into an anti-hero character because it's Angelina Jolie, and now you have the another queen who's a female who's her enemy. And so it's not a problem, but the guys just tend to wander around the movies being useless, and it's all a matter of they're all chick movies. I guess it's okay if that's what the audience you're going for is.
Right.
We had that same problem in that seems to be. I was hoping Disney's probably going to die of political correctness if it doesn't watch it though.
Right. And especially with Phase 4 of what Marvel intends to do with their characters. True fans, not normies, are saying you don't need to change these characters. There's plenty of characters.
There's
black characters, there's gay characters, there's whatever.
Or if you want to, just be interesting and, like you said, design new characters as part of your story and make them whatever you want.
Right.
But again, diversity, we talked about in the past. What level of diversity does it mean? I mean, gay people make up about 5% of America, so that's okay. Well, then that's one in 20 characters. You should have, if you have 20 characters in a Marvel movie, one of them would be gay. That if you played the normal percentages on that.
Right.
If you're woke, you'd have 2, I guess, in 20. But it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense to me why you have to do that. Just make good stories and good characters, and people will be interested. I don't really care. In a superhero movie, I don't really care who Spider-Man's sleeping with.
Right. Should it matter?
Should it matter? The answer is probably not. I mean, in comic books, they always when you read comics, there were romances as part of it too, because you have again plot and then subplot. Plot is, of course, Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock. Subplot is the fact that Doc Ock is a former teacher of Spider-Man, and that it's, there's a whole relationship right there. Secondary subplot is he's having his relationship with Mary Jane Watson in the middle of all this too. I'm actually talking about Spider-Man 2 as in the good one, not the one with Tobey Maguire. That's the way plot should work. But you never actually do. You don't really need that. The most interesting element of the story was the plot and the secondary plot, not the romance. The romance is just put in kind of as filler on the side to make the movie long enough. My opinion, for what it's worth.
You're such a toxic male.
Yeah, what can I say? It'd be better than a venomous feminist.
The Black Widow movie that's set to release soon. It's a prequel.
Which means there's no possibility she's going to die or get seriously hurt or injured in it.
Right. I don't know why they did it this way.
Well, because she's already dead. I mean, they killed her off in the main story.
Well, I know that, but I'm like, why did they even bother?
Well, I think they figured they owed Scarlett Johansson a movie. They've been promising her one for a long time back, and they're trying to establish a actual interesting female character. I mean, they tried doing that with Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel, is pretty much Captain Marvel's a cure for insomnia. Okay, so there's no reason. I mean, I watched it and I went, and there was nothing in the movie interesting. As the actress in particular, I go, God, this is a boring character. I mean, the Black Widow has had some potential for. I mean, in say Winter Soldier, I thought they fleshed her character out a little bit, and it was interesting that she had that she was, the idea of being a double agent and who do you trust, and trying to redeem your past, having been a murdering dark character. I mean, they mentioned things in her past. I mean, Loki mentioned about the things that happened that he knew about her, that she were obviously rattling her cage a little bit, though he was in the cage. So there's area there to be fleshed out in that character, but a much better story would have been coming up with a way to bring her back and have her having transcended death and coming back. Boy, that's an interesting character to have for a dark character.
Then people would complain, oh, nobody can die and stay dead. They always bring people back to life, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but it's okay for Captain America to go back and change all history and stay with Peggy Carter. It's okay to mess with time here and there as you choose to, and kill Thanos from the past and in the end of their story, even though doesn't that change the whole reason why he came there?
I don't know if it's the director's cut or some of the unused footage of the story of Endgame had Thanos going back, and I don't remember which version of Captain America, like which time, but a younger time, and brought back his head in the fight that he was having with Captain America to psych him out, and that wasn't used.
Well, because it'd be unnecessary, because the only reason Cap was able to fight Thanos is because they decided to let him have Thor's hammer in the fight. If not, Captain America, Thanos is tough as the Hulk or tougher. How well does Cap do in a fight against?
Did I tell you I was the only one in the theater that showed any emotion during that when Captain America grabbed the Thor's hammer?
Mjolnir.
I was like, yeah, woohoo! And people looked at me like I was strange.
Well, in the premieres, I remember when the movie first came out, I'd listen to some of the scene, the reactions from previews and stuff, and a lot of people were really excited about that.
I heard theaters all across the world were just up in arms, hollering and shouting, and I was the only one in my theater here to.
Well, welcome to Aberdeen, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
But I'd agree. Well, it's like in the much better movie, which was Infinity War, I think. When Thor shows up in Wakanda, there were crowds. Even when I saw it in Aberdeen here, there were people that cheered and clapped. There wasn't a lot of them, but there were half a dozen people who went, "Oh, cool!" Clap, 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 clap.
Yeah.
When he showed up, and everyone, they're all about to get their butts handed to him, and Thor shows up and said, "I'm here to save the day." But
he had to fail.
Well, he had to fail, of course, because Thor is the embodiment of white male privilege in the Marvel universe. I mean, you can't get he's Nordic. You can't get any whiter than Nordic. He's blonde, blue-eyed, tall, masculine, bearded, everything that is wrong with the whole political correctness idea. So Thor has to fail. Because if he didn't, like I said, even the director said that if Thor hit him in the head instead of in the chest,
done deal.
The movie would end there, and Thor would have said, "And this is my new axe, and this is my new Infinity Gauntlet," and
they lived happily ever after.
They lived happily ever after. That would have been all there is to it. And they said, "Oh well, the Black Widow would have still been, and Gamora would have been dead." I go, "He did just use the Gauntlet's power to bring back Gamora."
Yeah.
It's like, you're going, well, they said in the second one you couldn't do that. And I go, that's because it's Bruce Banner and he's a mortal being. Thor's not mortal, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, and then they beat the hell out of him in Endgame. I mean, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it in the concept what I just said, and then you look at what they did to Thor in Endgame, make him a fat slob.
Right. With no goals.
And yet with an axe and a hammer, and still not able to handle Thanos. Yet he was, didn't have any problem fighting him with an Infinity Gauntlet in the movie before.
Right.
It's just, you guys are just telling me this is all just PC nonsense, and that's the sad part. I don't think Chris Hemsworth is a total sellout and he just wants his money, or he's too stupid to realize how abused his character was, because he was all positive. Oh, it was wonderful, the acting talent and nonsense. They made you into a doofus and you laughed about it.
Why couldn't the story have gone that way?
There are a lot of things you could have done, but isn't it interesting that it's the one character the most abused character in those movies is Thor. He's the only character that doesn't get the same power level he has in the comics. I mean, and they always restricted him down, and in the end, he takes all the beatings and all the failures, and it's somebody else gets to save the day. It annoys me. And again, I'm a Thor fan, so I feel
you're so toxic.
My opinions could be prejudiced on that because I've always liked the Thor character.
Your toxic privilege.
And I've never been a big Iron Man fan, though my nephew's a big Iron Man fan, so I got to be careful. If he hears this, he'll get mad at me.
Nobody's listening.
No, well, actually, he may listen. Listen to it on YouTube. Of course, on our Johnny and the Professor channel on YouTube, put it in quotation marks, and you'll find it immediately.
Are you sure? They haven't buried it?
No. Well, if you put it in quotes, you'll always find it, even if they bury it, because you're looking for the whole phrase. And there's no other channel on YouTube called Johnny and the Professor. When you put in quotes, it looks for the whole sentence, and you have to find it then.
Well, I'm sure they'll.
Well, if we had enough people, they'd demonetize us. But we don't have enough people to get monetized yet, so we're still working on that. I want to be successful enough to be demonetized. So, anything else in the wide world of entertainment?
That's all I got. I didn't have a whole lot, but.
Necessarily.
Do you have any?
Nothing's really coming to mind. Like I said, I feel bad. I should have went and saw the Maleficent movie, because then I could have given you an interesting review. I feel bad now.
I can tell.
I have failed you.
Right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of Johnny and the Professor.
Please send any emails to us at jpshowfm@gmail.com. I check those every day, sometimes even more than once a day. So if you have comments or complaints or anything you want to say, send us questions. We'll put them on air. You can find us, of course, on YouTube at Johnny and the Professor. Put it in quotation marks. You'll find it right away. And then I have my YouTube channel, which is Arena of History. And, of course, I do articles for the Senior Sunset Times.
Get off my lawn! Was that insensitive?
I don't know. Is there such a thing? I didn't hear you. I'm getting hard of hearing because I'm getting old. What did you say?
You're listening to Johnny and the Professor. Politics.
This is actually what makes this whole thing so comical.
Pop culture.
This is something that they're going to be prioritizing, and that is diversity. Now, this is stupid.
Common sense in senseless times.